There's a fascinating story in Second Chronicles. It's in chapter 30, and it has to do with one of the great kings of Judah. His name's Hezekiah. Now, it's important to know that for the last 30 chapters, Judah and Israel, they used to be the united monarchy. Now they're the divided monarchy. And ever since the division, Israel and Judah have been at constant odds with one another. They're in this rivalry. They're always at the point of going to war with one another. And Israel has had this experience of the Assyrian Empire coming and taking over their land. So many of the Israelites are in exile throughout the Assyrian Empire, but there's a remnant left over. And Hezekiah decides to invite the people left over in Israel to come down and worship in Jerusalem. Now, this is significant. Hezekiah has just rebuilt the temple in Jerusalem. He's refurnished it, rather. And he invites these other people to come and worship with him. This is significant because not only were they at odds with one another, but they also had different understandings of God. They worshipped differently. And you see this in chapter 30, because when Hezekiah makes this invitation, the Israelites don't know all of the rituals that go along at the cult in Jerusalem. So the Israelites show up and they don't do the rituals correctly. And usually what ends up happening when you don't do a ritual correctly is that violence ends up occurring. People freak out and there's this violence. And that doesn't happen here. Well, here Hezekiah asks for mercy, prays to God to forgive the Israelites because they didn't know what they were doing. So Hezekiah asks for forgiveness and God forgives them. And it also says later in the chapter that Hezekiah fulfilled the law all the time. Here you get this notion where the fulfillment of the law is also grace and forgiveness. This is what the law is all about. It's this act of grace. And I wonder, from a biblical perspective, how our world might be different if we treated those who viewed God slightly differently than we do with that kind of grace. How would the world look differently as opposed to burning one another's sacred books if we invited one another in to have this experience of worship that's based on grace?